Well, good evening. I am Captain Zebulon Pike, soldier and explorer. 210 years ago, myself and 15 men built a stockade very near to where we're standing right now. Well, you might ask, what were we doing here 210 years ago in 1806? Well, before I answer that question, I'd like to take a minute and tell you how Clarissa and I met and fell in love. But you know what, Clarissa, it's a love story. Why don't you go ahead and tell it?
Okay. After the Revolutionary War, my father, Captain John Brown, who fought alongside of George Washington, settled down on a plantation in Sugar Land, Kentucky. Zebulon was a young officer stationed along the Ohio River and made many trips down to our plantation. Now, I've known Zebulon quite a long time, as my father, Captain John Brown, and his mother, Isabella Brown Pike, are sister and brother. Yes, we're first cousins. My father refused to give us permission to marry, not because we were first cousins, but he did not want me marrying a soldier and living the harsh life of the frontier. But we were in love, and so we eloped to the frontier town of Cincinnati and were married. To this day, my father still refuses to speak to me.
Well, 3 years prior to my being here in 1806, in 1803, President Thomas Jefferson had the incredible offer from France to buy the Louisiana Territory, 828,000 square miles of land between the Mississippi River and the Rocky Mountains, all for the paltry sum of only $15 million, or what amounted to around 16 cents an acre. This virtually doubled the size of the United States with the stroke of a pen. Well, President Jefferson wanted to find out what was out in this vast territory that he had purchased from the French, so he sent out explorers. He sent Lewis and Clark north to explore the Louisiana Territory along the Missouri River. He sent out Freeman and Dunbar south to explore the southern part of the Louisiana Territory along the Red River. And in 1806, I was sent out to explore the Louisiana Territory along the Arkansas River. The goals of my mission were to make friends with all the Indians that I met along the way, especially the Comanche, who were thought to be at war with Spain at the time. I was to ascend the Arkansas, find the source of the Arkansas. I was to find the source of the Red River, which at the time was thought to be in the same mountains as the source of the Arkansas. And I was to descend the Red River back to the United States. Well, in 1806, the United States and Spain were very nearly at war, in a dispute over the borders of the Louisiana Territory and some of the land attached to it. So I was also asked, since I'd be so close to Spanish territory, to look in on the Spanish, ascertain their military strength and numbers. Spy on them, basically. So I left Fort Bellefontaine and Clarissa on July 15th, 1806. 4 months later, November 12th of 1806, we crossed into what is now Colorado. 3 days later, I thought I could distinguish a mountain to my right that appeared like a small blue cloud. Upon further examination through my spyglass, I was more confirmed in my conjecture. It was a mountain, a very tall mountain in a chain of mountains, and I determined then that I would climb to the top of this peak, which I determined was only a few days' march away.
He's never been very good with judging distance.
8 days later, we were marching along the river, and we came to a spot on the Arkansas where a stream ran in from the north. I was sure this stream came from what I now call the Grand Peak or the Blue Mountain. I thought this would be a good place to build a stockade for the rest and recovery of my men, while I took a couple other men and ascended the peak. The next day, we built the stockade, and at 1 o'clock, myself, Dr. Robinson, Privates Brown and Miller marched to the peak, intending to camp at its base that evening.
Again, not good with the distance.
That evening, we camped under a lone cedar tree and spent a cold night out on the prairie. 3 days later, we still hadn't made it to the peak. We arose that morning cold, tired, and hungry. We ascended a nearby peak, and upon reaching the top, the snow was waist deep and the temperature 4 below zero, and us dressed in our winter uniforms. Summer uniforms, I'm sorry, in our summer uniforms. I looked out and I saw that the Grand Peak or the Blue Mountain was still 15 or 16 miles distant, and again as high as what we had just ascended. I determined then that no man would ever be able to climb to the pinnacle of this peak. So we turned around and we marched back to our stockade on the Arkansas and continued our mission. We ascended the Arkansas, becoming lost in the mountains for about a month. We made a big circle, returning back to the spot where we had entered the mountains. We continued our mission. We went through what is now the Wet Mountain Valley. We crossed what I call the Great White Mountains, which are the Sangres. And of course, in the middle of winter, this would have been January, covered with snow. We descended into some great hills of sand, which now would be the sand dunes. And on the highest hill of sand, I spied a river, the Red River. Aha! We'll be able to return to the United States. But my men were in bad shape, and we built a stockade again for rest and recovery. Several weeks later, we were visited by some Spanish soldiers. They asked, "What are you doing here?" I told them we're a party of Americans descending the Red River back to the United States. They said, "This isn't the Red River, this is the Rio del Norte, what is now the Rio Grande. And this is Spanish territory, and you're under arrest for trespassing and spying." They marched us to Chihuahua. They confiscated my papers, interrogated us, and tried us as spies. My men and I were convicted of being spies and were to be executed. But remember, United States and Spain were very near war, and Governor Salcedo didn't want our execution to be the spark that caused the war. He didn't want to be responsible. So he had us escorted back to the United States. We got the grand tour of Spanish territory, and I was able to gather all the information that I needed. Upon reaching the United States, July 5th of 1807, nearly a year after leaving on our mission, words cannot describe the gaiety in my heart upon seeing my country's flag wave aloft again.
Or me.
Thank you.